Choroidal neovascularization, we all know, is basically these are abnormal vessels growing under the RPE, breaking through it and reaching the subretinal space. It could be because of ARMD, high myopia, could be inflammatory, and could be idiopathic. But most of the stress is on age-related the process, because that causes most of them. Well, basically, the choroidal neovascularization causes a leakage of fluid, which goes under and into the retina or into the subretinal space, or causes subretinal or sub-RPE hemorrhage, and that results in a visual loss. What you see over here is a large sub-RPE hemorrhage, and what you see over here is a subretinal hemorrhage. Now, this smaller subretinal hemorrhage is more dangerous than this large sub-RPE hemorrhage in terms of vision loss. Now, when it comes to classification, we do topographic classification into juxtafoveal, extrafoveal, and subfoveal. And that's important because extrafoveal lesions can be treated by laser. And if you have juxtafoveal and subfoveal lesions, then pharmacotherapy is the mainstay of treatment. It's also good to do an angiographic classification because it gives you an idea of how these eyes are going to behave. In a classic CNV, you have early hyperfluorescence, which becomes very severe in the very blurred edges and more intense in the late phases. Or you could have an occult CNVM, which has no leakage in the early phase, but becomes late leakage comes up in the later phases. Or you can have an RPE detachment, which has the hyperfluorescence coming from the early phases and becomes more intense, but the margins remain well-defined in the late phase. Now, nowadays, what we follow is a morphological classification into the type 1, type 2, and type 3. And type 1 is basically when it arises under the retina, under the RPE, sorry. And this is what you see over here. Type 2 is when it rises above the RPE, as you see in this patient. And type 3 is when it arises in the substance of the retina and then goes downwards, proceeds towards the RPE, that's a retinal angiomatous proliferation. The important thing is that untreated choroidal neovascularization will usually progress to almost 6 lines vision loss over a period of 2 years, with the classic lesions behaving worse in a faster period and the occult lesions behaving a little slower, but finally they also cause loss of vision. So when you have a patient where you are not sure, if you want to detect, the easiest way is to do a fluorescein, is to do an OCT, and if you find any changes, then do a fluorescein angiography for characterization, which tells you the subtype and whether it's extrafoveal or subfoveal. This is just to give you an example of how a lesion which is well-defined extrafoveal can be completely destroyed by a laser without any adverse effects, and that's still a mainstay of treatment for these patients. However, for subfoveal and juxtafoveal lesions, well, the gold standard till now has been ranibizumab, but now aflibercept is catching up for this. And the treatment is with at least 3 loading doses in all active lesions on fluorescein angiography and OCT with any level of visual acuity. Even if the visual acuity is low, I would give a chance with the first 3 injections. Now, how do you manage these patients? Once you've given the first 3 injections, is check up the vision, and at that time, check up whether the lesion is dry on OCT. If the lesion is dry, the patient just needs monthly follow-ups, and no occurrence occurs in the next 3 months, you can now extend the follow-ups also to 6 weeks, then 8 weeks, then 10 weeks, and progressively to a maximum of 12 weeks. If, however, any recurrence occurs during this period, then I would consider PRN treatments with monthly follow-ups continuing and month monitoring to continue. This is just to show you, and why this is important, because it's not necessary that every patient will keep on needing injections. Now, for example, this patient got a little bit of, was okay, got a little bit of subretinal fluid, was treated, and next 5 months, the patient was all right. So every patient who has some fluid doesn't need to be treated month after month. And if you take on treat and extend, you may end up giving them lots and lots of injections. However, treat and extend regime could be an acceptable alternative in a one-eyed patient who has a dry lesion after their treatment also. Other important thing is if the patient is requiring PRN treatment with ranibizumab on a less than 8 weekly basis, say every 6 weeks he's needing an injection, consider a PRN with aflibercept. The second group of patients are those whom you, after the first 3 injections, find that the vision has improved or is stable, but the lesion is not yet dry. So a little bit of fluid is still there, intraretinal, not going down, or subretinal, just stable. Now, if this is so, you would continue monthly till the patient becomes dry. And if in the next 3 months the lesion dries up, the treatment is the same as for a PRN treatment. But if it does not dry up and it stays stable, now in these patients, you can consider using a treat and extend regime. Extend from 4 weeks to 6 weeks to 8 weeks to 10 weeks. And if the lesion remains stable, you can go up to 12 weeks. With aflibercept, you can even go up to 16 weeks. If you started off with ranibizumab and the patient is staying stable, you could give a trial of aflibercept to see how the patient is behaving. Now, if you've given, now this is happening very frequently, if you've given the initial 3 loading doses of aflibercept and the patient becomes dry, you follow the same regime. But if it's stable, this patient will need to be put on a treat and extend regime, and you have to see whether you can get a greater than 8-week interval in these patients. If you don't get that, revert back to ranibizumab. So this is just to show you a patient who, after the initial injections, continued to receive injections every 4 to 6 weeks, and therefore had to be maintained on. Then we gave her a try of ranibizumab also. So if I'm needing to give aflibercept every 6 weeks or 4 weeks, I would actually prefer to try with ranibizumab again in those patients. Now, just to sum this up, if the lesion is dry, try treat and extend ranibizumab. If your treat and extend ranibizumab is more than 6 weeks, continue the same. If it's not able to continue at up to 8 weeks, go to treat and extend aflibercept and see whether you can maintain on that. If you have a patient who started with a stable lesion but not dry, continue treat and extend aflibercept. If you are able to get more than 8 weeks, stick to aflibercept. If you're not able to get that, try Lucentis. If I have to use both aflibercept and ranibizumab 4 to 6 weekly, I would prefer to use ranibizumab in that. Now, there are cases where sometimes initial 3 loading dose of ranibizumab given, and now PRN ranibizumab is being given every 6 weekly. Now try this patient on PRN aflibercept. And this is what was done here. The patient was given aflibercept and it resolved. So it helped to give us a rescue in these patients. And then we could maintain him back on ranibizumab. Of course, if you have non-responders, please do rule out polypoidal choroidal vasculopathy. Suspect it when you have any case of very large hemorrhages or very large exudation in the macular area. When you do the OCT of these patients, you'll find they have peaked RPE detachments. They have shallow undulating RPEDs along with them, and often with a double layer sign. There's another line within that. So this is an indication that you're dealing with PCV, and these patients may be better dealt with by either a combination of PDT with ranibizumab or with aflibercept. There are certain situations where you're not going to treat. If I have a patient like this, macular scar worsening to the point the vision is less than 3/60, there's no indication for treatment. If you have this kind of scar which is formed and these are cold hemorrhages, again, there is no indication for any further treatment. But if you have, keep it in mind, if you have a non-progressive occult lesion, dense RPD, vision 6/6, I would not treat this patient unless I have definite evidence of progression. The mean outcomes after treatment with anti-VEGF drugs are very good for the next 2-3 years, and up to 10-letter improvements occur. But over a period of time, 5 to 7 years, these patients will start losing vision. But still, the outcomes, at least 1/4 of your patients will have better than 6/12 vision, and you would be able to get better than 6/18 in 1/3. The important thing is that ongoing treatment would be continuing in half of your patients. So the important thing is, it's a lifelong disease. Monthly follow-ups are essential till the lesion heals, and then 3 monthly follow-ups, lifelong. High index of suspicion for retreatment is needed. If you have a loss of BCVA, even small amount, OCT evidence of fresh fluid or persistent fluid, increase in central retinal thickness, any new hemorrhage. So that's why fundus examination is critical, or even if the surgeon subjectively feels that the macular fluid is increasing, you need to treat these patients. Ladies and gentlemen, eternal vigil is the price we pay for maintaining vision in these patients. And if we do that, we can save the vision of a lot of our patients for a long, long time. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.